Lots to get to, much to discuss, but I teased it last segment. We haven't discussed it yet. With Major League Baseball hitting the trade deadline, what is the latest on the very important question about our charity cardboard cutouts in Dodger Stadium? Danny G, what's the latest?
Yeah, making home field homelier. Fingers crossed, Clay. I'm expecting confirmation with a picture of where our cutouts are actually located in Dodger Stadium today before the team arrives at the stadium. So as soon as I get word, I will forward it on to you and Roberto.
All right, that is fantastic news. All right, so that's the update on the cardboard cutouts for all of you waiting there with bated breath. You'll be able to see the three of us pretty easily in Dodger Stadium. Now, one other thing I want to hit on, and I do think it's important, I can't believe how quickly this Jacob Blake story has disappeared, considering that it shut down sports before we had all the facts. And now that the facts are in, I want to hit this and see what the crew thinks. So, in the Jacob Blake situation, what initially happened in Kenosha was you had a 15 or 20-second video that was shared of a police shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. And everybody reacts to that 15 or 20-second video. NBA players refuse to play. Many Major League Baseball players refuse to play. NHL shuts down for 2 days. Also, the MLS does. The WNBA actually shuts down as well. I don't know if they're back or not. I never knew that they were playing, to be honest, like most of you. But the WNBA players actually come out wearing T-shirts with Jacob Blake's name spelled out, okay? Subsequent to all of this, more details come out about this case. In particular, the reason why police were there in the first place, a woman called 911 and asked for police protection because Jacob Blake felony sexually assaulted her and was violating a trespass order, and so she was asking for police to come protect her from him. That's why they showed up, allegedly, according to all of the 911 calls and the data there, because far from being terrified of police, which is what LeBron James said, a black woman in Kenosha, Wisconsin, called police seeking for them to come protect her and her family from Jacob Blake. Police show up knowing that this guy has a felony sexual assault arrest warrant out for him and that he has shown up at this woman's house. They then attempt to subdue him. They shoot him with a taser. The taser doesn't work. They wrestle with him. He shoves off police, resists arrest, refuses to comply to their orders to stop, walks around his car, opens the door, and either reaches or takes possession of a knife, and at that point, he is shot. All of that changes things in a big way, and honestly, to me, it makes it embarrassing that the pro sports leagues shut down. The WNBA wrote a man's name on the front of their T-shirts and posed for a photo of a guy who's wanted for felony sexual assault of a woman that is around the same age as those WNBA players. I guess Me Too doesn't exist anymore if now Major League Sports are shutting down, pro sports are shutting down over a situation like this. The story has completely vanished. Yesterday we talked about this a bit. I bet Outkick is the only place that is even going to mention these details going forward. I guarantee you, almost. I bet there won't be a single mention on any other national radio program about Jacob Blake or the fact that he was wanted for felony sexual assault, or that the woman who called seeking police help, far from being terrified of police, she was calling seeking their assistance. Danny G, why do you think, given how big of a story this was, NBA shuts down, Major League Baseball, many of the teams don't play. MLS shuts down. And also the NHL shuts down. The NHL got bullied into shutting down by people on social media. Yet as soon as all these facts come out, everybody in the blue checkmark brigade, everybody in sports media, all these different websites that had featured stories about Jacob Blake and sharing all these athlete opinions and everything else, it just vanishes. It feels eerily similar to what happened with Michael Bennett. If you remember when Michael Bennett alleged that he had been racially discriminated against, and then all the videos from the Las Vegas police came out essentially proving that it didn't happen, the story just disappeared. Same thing happened with LeBron James and the racist graffiti on his gate. As soon as the LA Police Department declines to announce that there was any sort of crime that happened or even any evidence of a crime, this story just disappears. Same thing seems to be happening in the world of sports with Jacob Blake. Is that very fair to listeners? Is that very fair to an audience that as soon as your preferred narrative disappears, oh my God, this story isn't talked about anymore? And it looks like we have yet another example of everybody rushing to a result before all the evidence is in. Now, you can still believe that he may not needed this police officer to have fired his weapon that many times, and there still could be an investigation as to whether charges could come there. But that is a much different story than what we were initially led to believe. I want to give everybody a chance to weigh in here because we didn't have an open forum discussion because we had Jason Whitlock on yesterday, and he and I discussed it. Are you surprised that this story basically vanished, given as more details emerged? Danny G.
Well, we had an open and honest conversation about this last week, and emotions was a big part of the conversation because obviously there was a lot of reaction before all the facts came in. But the sticking point and what I've still heard and seen on the internet and on radio and TV is what you just mentioned about the 7 shots and was that excessive? And last week I read a text from my friend who is a sergeant here at the LAPD about how they're trained in a situation like that. So you're right, that is going to be up to the justice system. But why so many people have gotten mad and where even some family members have argued in some group chats and text messages that have gone back and forth over the past week is that police officers usually get the benefit of the doubt, which I'm not saying is wrong, but there have been some judges in some instances where it looked like police were in the wrong, but they were let walk. And obviously this dates all the way back to the early riots here, early for us in our generation, in the riots here in LA. And so you just get this big mess with arguments back and forth.
But don't
and then
you think
you start
the
hearing
media
about
has an obligation to share all of the stories? Like we saw a 15 or 20-second story.
Yeah.
Like ESPN has, I bet they had 25 stories about Jacob Blake and the response and athlete opinions and all the different decisions that were made. When the 911 call is out, when additional videos are out and they show an entirely different story. Heck, when you find out that the reason why police were there was because this woman called 911 because this guy showed up who had felony sexually assaulted her, it's hard to believe that he is some innocent party who had done nothing wrong, which was what was said from the moment this story actually began.
Well, I mean, the argument has been no matter his past or what he was in trouble for, was it necessary for 7 shots in his back? And, you know, and that gets into this whole defund the police thing, which we've talked about on the show. And my thought on that is it should be like Top Gun, the best of the best of the best. I would actually put more money into the police force, not take it away. My thinking being I would almost want it to be like all Navy SEALs. You know, not guys who got bullied in high school or were doing the bullying or some of the bad cops that we've heard stories about or seen videos on, but guys where they go all the way back and test their mettle, their character, and make sure that they are trained to the T.
I like that idea in general. There aren't enough people who are Navy SEAL like. I mean, that's,
you don't think that
No.
if we put more money into the forces that we would get the best?
No, I don't. Not for the numbers that you need. Like, we have tons of people.
If we gave the police force more money, I think it would attract what we need, because the police are underpaid. Like my friend, when there were the protests, the initial protests going on here after the George Floyd situation in L.A., he was working 18-hour shifts. They canceled all vacation and all personal time. And dude was like on his last breath. He was so tired. And he texted me that he was thinking about turning his badge in. And it upset me because he's one of the really, really good cops.
Well, that's the problem that you're going to have, is that many cops out there are going to move on to other jobs. But the challenge is we know already, data reflects, this isn't in any way complex. The more police officers there are on the streets, the lower the overall crime rate there is, period. This is not in any way debatable. And so, and by the way, this whole defund the police thing is not even supported by anybody. I was reading in the Wall Street Journal recently, and only 20% of black people in any inner city neighborhoods want to defund the police because they call the police too. And so this idea of taking the numbers of police off the streets and it's somehow going to make neighborhoods safer is frankly total insanity. And so I just think if you want to make the streets safer, the way to make the streets safer is to have more police officers. And we already know this. Like in all of the cities where the defund the police arguments have occurred, the murder rate has skyrocketed since protests began. So you know all these people, all these athletes walk around and they say like, hey, Black Lives Matter. It's so important. You got it written on the basketball court. Black lives, more of them have been lost since the protests began than would have been lost if there had never been a protest in the first place. So if that is the result, and it indisputably is, you have to ask yourself, are we actually making things worse? Everybody's like, oh, athletes should use their platforms. I think athletes are making things worse because I think they're increasing the overall tension between police and people that police are trying to police, right? Suspects. And on a larger scale, what I think here should be happening if people really want to make things better is the idea that you should ever resist arrest from police is lunacy. Athletes and everybody else out there, this is what I said on the show yesterday. If a police officer is trying to arrest you, if you feel like you are being arrested unjustly, you're not going to win that argument. You have to stop fighting. Like in every one of these situations, almost without fail, if someone had just said, okay, I'm not going to fight with you, there would have been no death. Almost across the board. No shooting, no injuries. If you have a warrant for your arrest out, if Jacob Blake had just allowed himself to be arrested, heck, if he just hadn't gone to this woman's house, he would have never gotten shot. So we focus on the end result. We don't focus on how did you get there. And I just can't believe that this story vanishes in general as soon as the fuller picture is revealed. Dub, are you surprised that this story just basically disappears?
I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised because you laid out some other examples of, similar
Michael
situations.
Bennett, the LeBron James, yes.
But I don't understand. Everyone focuses on the 20-second video that we all saw. But now with all the information that's come out, it seems like this is a story that is most likely years, in the making with all the things that are involved with Jacob Blake and this woman. So it's like we take 20 seconds and that's the only 20 seconds we see. But in reality, there are months, if not years, behind this story that no one focuses on. And then once those details come out, it's total silence.
Yeah, it is pretty wacky, though, to me, the way the stories go, and that basically nobody's ever going to talk about the larger story. What about you, Eddie? Are you surprised it just vanishes? This is a pretty big deal. Sports leagues shut down over something that had nothing to do at all with sports. Total precedent being set that if athletes get upset by viral videos, they don't work. I mean, it's lunacy to me. Are you surprised this story just basically, other than a show like Outkick, disappears?
Well, if you don't mind, I would like to comment on the idea of jumping to conclusions.
Yes.
And you probably don't know this because you don't live here, but we had a shooting here yesterday in Los Angeles that's just now getting in the news. Sheriff's deputies in L.A. shot and killed a black man, 29 years old, in South Central Los Angeles. And as soon as the news reported on it and word got out, Black Lives Matters LA sent out a tweet, everyone get down to the scene of the shooting and start to protest. They don't know any details on this shooting. They're still investigating it. They're on the scene investigating it, and yet they're immediately out there protesting, even though they have no clue what the details are on this. So this is indicative of how this is going, where all you know is a black man was killed by police, and no matter what the details are, immediately your first reaction is to protest and get down there and make a demonstration. So it's happening here in LA. I have no idea if this is going to be a big story. I have no idea if the NBA is going to shut down because of this. Who knows how this is going to go, but it's just the reaction I've seen here in Los Angeles in the last few hours is, to me, what the NBA did over the shooting of Jacob Blake.
I don't know anything about that story, so I can't speak to it. But the precedent that was set of, hey, when something that has nothing to do with our job happens externally that makes us upset, there's always going to be a viral video somewhere that is capable of making someone upset. And the idea of we don't go to work because of it is crazy. I can't believe nobody else, even hardly in the entire world of sports media, talked about this. There's always going to be another viral video that can upset people. So this is just, to me, pure insanity that anyone would have decided, hey, I'm not going to do my job because of some 15 or 20 second video that I saw. And to your point, Eddie, we don't know anything. I mean, it's the first time I've heard anything about that at all. But the fact that your first reaction is start protesting before you even know any of the basic facts involved, I think just goes to show how political this situation is in general.